There's a question I hear often: do narcissists even care that they hurt you? And it's tempting to answer with a quick, bitter no. But let's go deeper. When someone with narcissistic tendencies wounds you, it can feel like they walk away unaffected, almost like you were just a prop in their storyline. But behind that coldness, that indifference, is something they're desperately hiding, not from you, from themselves. Here's the truth: they feel something, not guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame, on the other hand, whispers, I am bad. And that shame, it's unbearable. So they cover it with rage, with blame, with indifference, because to admit they've hurt you would mean facing the part of themselves they've spent a lifetime avoiding. The part that feels unworthy, defective, not enough. You see, narcissists are not void of emotion. They are experts at emotional disconnection. They don't lack feelings. They lack access to them, because accessing those emotions would require vulnerability. And vulnerability is terrifying when your identity is built on needing to be right, superior, untouchable. So instead of admitting harm, they rewrite the story. When a narcissist hurts you, your first instinct might be to assume they feel nothing, that they're callous, cold, or simply incapable of caring. And on the surface, that might seem true. But if we go beneath the surface, not to excuse, but to understand, we find something raw, something powerful, something that runs the show in silence. Shame, not guilt. Shame. There's a profound difference. Guilt is, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad. And shame doesn't whisper, it screams. It tells the narcissist that they are fundamentally flawed, that they're not enough, that they're unlovable unless they're perfect, and that the minute someone sees past the facade, they'll be rejected, maybe even destroyed. This is why narcissists construct a mask. It's not just vanity or ego, it's survival. The mask is the armor they've built over years, sometimes decades, to protect the most fragile parts of themselves. They didn't wake up one day and decide to hurt people, but they learned often early in life that vulnerability was dangerous, that being real, open, and imperfect invited shame, criticism, or even abandonment. So instead, they built a self that looked powerful, impressive, invincible. But shame doesn't go away when you hide it, it festers. And here's where it becomes so dangerous. When they hurt you, whether through betrayal, manipulation, or gaslighting, a healthy person might feel remorse. They might reflect, take accountability, and say, I was wrong, I hurt you. But for the narcissist, that kind of admission is intolerable. To admit wrongdoing is to confirm the very thing shame tells them: you are worthless. So instead of processing shame, they deflect it. They lash out. They blame you. They reframe the story so they're the victim or hero, never the one at fault. Because shame is not just uncomfortable for them, it's annihilating. They don't feel it in passing, they drown in it. And rather than drown, they throw it on to others, often the people closest to them. You may have felt this, that strange sense that somehow you're the one feeling all the shame, even though they were the one who caused the harm. That's not an accident. That's projection, one of shame's favorite defense mechanisms. But let's be clear, just because they don't show their shame doesn't mean they don't feel it. They do, deeply. But instead of facing it, they armor up. And that armor, arrogance, defensiveness, rage, is designed to keep both you and their own pain at a distance. So when they hurt you and walk away like nothing happened, what they're really doing is running not from you, but from the emotional reckoning they cannot bear. They are terrified of being exposed as imperfect, terrified of being. That's the cruelty of shame. It keeps them locked in a prison while simultaneously hurting everyone around them. But here's the truth you need to hold on to. Their shame is not your responsibility. It is not your job to carry it, fix it, or shrink yourself to protect them from it. You don't owe your empathy to someone who weaponizes their wounds. Your healing begins the moment you stop wondering if they ever truly cared and start understanding that their silence, their coldness, their cruelty was never about your worth, and it was about their fear. And once you see that, you can set the shame down, not theirs, but the shame they handed you, and finally begin to reclaim your power. To understand someone with narcissistic traits, you have to understand what they fear most. And it's not rejection or even failure, it's exposure. Exposure means being truly seen, not the curated, performative, impressive version of themselves they work so hard to present, but the real them. The flawed, wounded, insecure, messy human underneath the mask. And that's terrifying for them. Because somewhere along the way, maybe as early as childhood, they learned a dangerous lesson. If people see the real me, they'll leave or laugh or hurt me, or worse, they'll realize I'm not enough. So they built a false self, a grand image that looks confident, strong, admired, even magnetic. This is the self they bring into the world. And it becomes their armor, their shield, their identity, but no mask. No matter how shiny, can protect you from the vulnerability that real relationships require. See, healthy connection demands that we let ourselves be known. It asks us to drop the act, to show up messy and imperfect, to say things like, I don't know, I need help, or I was wrong. But for the narcissist, these are dangerous confessions because they open the door to exposure. So what happens when you challenge them? What happens when you point out their harmful behavior? What happens when you say, that hurt me, or that wasn't okay? You don't get reflection. You don't get accountability. You get defensiveness or denial or blame because your truth threatens their image. And if you're close enough to see their flaws, you're close enough to see their shame. And here's the thing, to someone who fears exposure, truth feels like attack. Your honesty feels like betrayal. Your boundaries feel like abandonment. Your pain feels like a threat to their survival. So they go into protection mode. They gaslight, they deflect, they rewrite the narrative where you're the problem and they're the victim, not because they're evil or calculating, but because they genuinely believe that exposure is emotional death. This fear drives so much of their behavior. It's why they sabotage closeness. It's why they manipulate conversations. It's why they constantly need to be admired, not because they're full of themselves, but because they're terrified that without admiration, they'll disappear. But here's the cost. They never allow themselves to be known. They want to be loved, but only for the mask. They want intimacy, but not at the price of vulnerability. So they push people away, often the very people who care, because connection requires exactly what they cannot give: honesty, openness, humility. And what about you? You might have tried to reach them, to reason, to gently confront, to help them feel safe enough to come out from behind the mask. But it didn't work, not because you failed, but because you asked them to do something they have spent their entire life avoiding. And that's the heartbreak. You loved them deeply and they feared you deeply, not because of anything you did, but because you saw too much. And when you see too much of someone who fears exposure, they don't lean in. They run, they rage, they retreat, because exposure means vulnerability. And vulnerability means risk. And risk is something they've spent their life running from. But let me tell you what's true. You were never too much. You were just too real. And being real will always scare those who live behind a mask. So when they pushed you away or hurt you and refused to take responsibility, it wasn't because you didn't matter. It was because your presence threatened to unravel the false self they depend on. And for them, that's not just uncomfortable, it's unbearable. But here's the good news. You can live without masks. You can speak truth, stand in your worth, and hold space for your own messy, beautiful, complicated self. You don't have to dim your light to keep someone else from feeling exposed. You're allowed to be real, even if they're not ready to be. That's not your failure. That's your freedom. One of the most painful experiences when dealing with a narcissist is the sense that they are emotionally unreachable. You might pour your heart out, share your pain, or try to connect, and all you get back is coldness, indifference, or silence. It feels like they're behind an invisible wall, locked away from any real feeling. This isn't by accident. It's not that they don't have emotions. They do. In fact, narcissists often feel emotions intensely, but here's the crucial difference. They disconnect from them. They learn early on that feeling deeply is dangerous, vulnerability is a threat, empathy is a weakness. So to survive, especially in environments where love was conditional or inconsistent, they build emotional walls. Think of emotional disconnection as a kind of survival mechanism, a way to keep unbearable feelings from overwhelming them. When someone hurts them or when they hurt someone else, they shut down the part of themselves that might feel shame, guilt, or remorse. They compartmentalize their feelings, push away empathy, and avoid facing the consequences of their actions. For you, the person on the receiving end, this disconnection feels like rejection, like your pain doesn't matter, like you're invisible, like the person you trusted is not really present. And it's devastating because human connection requires vulnerability and emotional availability. It requires the messy, complicated willingness to hold another person's suffering alongside your own. But emotional disconnection means you are left carrying that suffering alone. This disconnection also means narcissists have an extremely limited ability to empathize in a genuine way. They may know what you're feeling intellectually, they can name emotions or recognize your words, but they cannot feel those emotions with you. They can't enter your world and experience your pain as you do. And when empathy is absent, compassion cannot grow. Why? Because empathy requires presence. It requires a willingness to be uncomfortable, to sit with another's pain without fixing it or turning it into a reflection of your own needs. But narcissists don't have that space inside themselves. They're so busy protecting their fragile self-image, managing their shame, and avoiding exposure that there's no room left for emotional connection. Instead, emotions become weapons or tools for control. If they show anger, it's a way to intimidate and deflect. If they feign concern, it's often a strategy to manipulate. But authentic feeling, real emotional presence, that's missing. And so when they hurt you, whether intentionally or not, they often won't acknowledge it, won't apologize, won't even seem to notice, because to do so would mean reconnecting with feelings they've worked so hard to avoid. This disconnection leaves you in a lonely, painful place. You feel unheard, unseen, and invalidated. And it can make you question your own reality. Was it really that bad? Am I overreacting? Am I imagining things? The truth is, your pain is valid. Your feelings matter, but the emotional disconnection of the narcissist means they can't meet you where you are. That doesn't make you crazy or weak. It just means they're not capable of the kind of love and connection you deserve. And here's the paradox. The very walls they've built to protect themselves are also the walls that keep them isolated, trapped in a world where real connection is impossible. For your own healing, it's essential to recognize this disconnection for what it is, a defense mechanism, not a reflection of your worth. You cannot force emotional availability where it doesn't exist. You cannot break down walls that someone else built and refuses to open. But you can choose to honor your own emotions. You can surround yourself with people who see you, who hear you, who feel with you. And in that choice, in that brave act of self-love, you reclaim your humanity. You remind yourself that real connection is messy, vulnerable, and imperfect, but it is possible. And it starts with you. When you look at a narcissist, you might see a person who appears controlled, composed, even confident. You might think their life is orderly, their emotions stable. But beneath that carefully crafted exterior, there's often a storm raging, a tumultuous inner world filled with confusion, conflict, and pain. This is what I call inner chaos. It's the hidden emotional turmoil that most people never see. Because the narcissist's identity depends on projecting strength and certainty, they bury the chaos deep inside. They don't let it surface, not to others, and often not even to themselves. At the root of this chaos is a profound conflict. They want connection, love, and acceptance, just like anyone else. But they also fear vulnerability, exposure, and failure so deeply that they sabotage those very things. This conflict plays out in contradictory ways. On one hand, they might crave admiration, validation, and approval, desperately seeking external proof of their worth. On the other hand, they might feel intense self-loathing, shame, and emptiness, feeling so uncomfortable that they push them away with anger, arrogance, or indifference. Inside, there's a voice that questions everything. Am I enough? Why do I always feel so empty? What if people see who I really am? What if I'm a fraud? These questions fuel the chaos. They don't have the tools to sit with these feelings or process them in healthy ways. Instead, they turn outward, blaming others, distorting reality, or trying to control the narrative to avoid facing the truth inside. The result is a turbulent inner life that is rarely expressed honestly. When the mask slips, they might lash out in rage or retreat into silence. They may cycle through grandiosity and despair. They may seem invincible one moment and deeply fragile the next. And when they hurt you, that chaos sometimes spills over onto you. Your feelings become collateral damage in their internal struggle. You see the anger, the blame, the cruelty, but not the pain underneath. And it's confusing, exhausting, and heartbreaking. The tragedy of inner chaos is that the narcissist is often trapped in a cycle they can't break on their own. They fear being vulnerable, so they avoid it, but that avoidance only deepens the chaos. They crave love, but push it away. They want control, but lose themselves in trying to maintain it for you. It's important to recognize that this chaos is not your fault. You did not cause it, and you cannot fix it. Their inner turmoil does not excuse their harmful behavior, but understanding it can help you separate their pain from your worth. You can hold compassion for the fact that they are hurting deeply while still protecting yourself from their destructive patterns. And remember, your healing doesn't depend on their chaos settling. Courage. It depends on your own courage to face your truth, to feel your feelings, and to create peace where you can. The chaos inside them does not have to become chaos inside you. One of the most heartbreaking realities when dealing with a narcissist is understanding how much they fear true connection and how much they prioritize control instead. Connection requires vulnerability. It means showing up with an open heart, sharing your fears and flaws, and trusting that you will be accepted even when you are imperfect. For someone who carries deep shame and fears exposure, vulnerability feels like stepping into a minefield. So instead of connection, they seek control. Control over how they are seen, control over how others feel, control over the narrative and the relationship. Control becomes their way of coping with uncertainty. Because when everything is unpredictable, feelings, relationships, acceptance, controlling the situation can create a false sense of safety. But here's the painful paradox. Control destroys the very connection they crave. And when a person tries to control the relationship, dictating the terms, deciding who is right or wrong, shutting down honest dialogue, they close the door on genuine intimacy. They make it impossible for anyone to truly know them or for anyone to truly know themselves alongside them. For you, this dynamic can feel like walking on eggshells. Like every word, every action has to be carefully measured because the narcissist's need for control is so strong that any deviation feels like a threat. Your feelings may be dismissed or minimized. Your boundaries may be tested or ignored. Your experience may be rewritten or invalidated. This is not just about wanting things a certain way. It's about survival. For the narcissist, control is armor against the vulnerability that connection demands, and the cost is high. They lose the chance to build relationships based on trust and mutual respect. They lose the chance to grow through empathy and shared humanity. And those closest to them often feel unheard, unseen, and emotionally starved. It's easy to mistake this behavior for cruelty or selfishness, and sometimes it is. But often it's rooted in fear. Fear that if they loosen their grip, if they allow real connection, they will lose themselves or worse, be rejected. For you, recognizing this dynamic is key to your own healing. You can't control their need for control. You can't force them to choose connection over dominance. But you can choose to protect your own heart. You can set boundaries that honor your worth. You can say no to manipulation or emotional coercion. You can seek relationships where connection is nurtured, not controlled. And here's something powerful to remember. True connection doesn't need control. It thrives in trust, openness, and mutual respect. When you let go of the need to control how others feel or respond, you open the door to genuine relationship. Your healing, your freedom comes when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable and start focusing on what you can control, your own boundaries, your own voice, your own worth. You don't have to be anyone's puppet or protector of their fragile ego. You deserve to be seen, heard, and loved just as you are. Narcissists hurt deeply, not because they want to destroy you, but because they are desperately protecting a fragile self that is broken underneath it all. They carry shame at their core. They fear being truly seen and exposed. They disconnect emotionally to survive the pain they cannot face. They wrestle with inner chaos they cannot calm. They control connections to protect themselves from vulnerability. And they will never admit the full truth of how they feel after hurting you. This doesn't excuse the pain they cause, far from it. But understanding their secret struggles can help you separate their brokenness from your worth. It can help you stop blaming yourself for their inability to be honest, vulnerable, or accountable. Your pain is real, your feelings matter, and you deserve to be loved by someone who sees you, hears you, and shows up with an open heart. So here's what you need to carry with you. You are not the problem. You are not the broken one. You are whole, even if they can't see it. Your freedom lies in choosing connection over control, in choosing vulnerability over silence, in choosing your own healing, no matter how they respond. You can walk away from the confusion, the blame, and the pain, not because you want to give up on love, but because you want to make space for the kind of love that lifts you up and sets you free. And that, my friend, is a truth worth embracing. Because real connection, real love, and real healing always begin with courage. The courage to see clearly, to feel deeply, and to choose yourself.